presenters PowerPoint. We will send out the PowerPoint presentation slides and the recordings to all registrants in the next week or so. That way you will be able to refer back to it or be able to share it as well. All participants have been muted. Please leave yourself on mute unless the presenter asks you to unmute yourself and engage. However, we want to leave time for the presenter to speak. And if you are having trouble hearing during the presentation, please let myself or any of the other NIHB staff members know by sending us a direct message, and we'll work to help make sure you can hear the presentation. We do encourage questions, so please put them in the chat box throughout the webinar, and we'll be going through and writing them down, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A. You can also ask your questions during the Q&A at that time as well, or unmute yourself during the Q&A and ask questions. When you do at the end during Q&A, we ask to turn your camera on so we can put a face to the name and make sure that our questions are getting out. So let us introduce our presenter for the evening. Dr. Tommy Rock is a member of the Navajo Nation from the Monument Valley, Utah, and a Princeton University Presidential Postdoctoral Research Fellow in the Department of Geosciences. Before starting his postdoctoral research, Dr. Tommy worked at a Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency, their Public Water System Supervision Program. Dr. Rock received his PhD in Earth Science and Environmental Sustainability and a Master's in Sustainable Studies from the Northern Arizona University and a Bachelor's in Environmental Geographic and Recreational Management from Arizona State University. Thank you, Dr. Rock, for joining us. The stage is all yours.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. And let me introduce myself in Navajo first. Tommy Rock Conchero, Peshagero, Aritushitin, Leo, Jet Coda de Nero, Aronasha, Arachidonea. Note that Ashin Schlant is some much as Chin 22, that's a Chedo. Look at that, that's not a dimension. Hi, my name is Tommy Rock, and what I just did is just a formal introduction in my native tongue. And that was a formal introduction. So my topic is environmental health and health outcomes. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. All right. The picture on the right-hand side is a picture of Lower Antelope. I went there about 3 years ago, so that's a picture of that. And my mentor, Dr. John Higgins, and Dr. Mark Zandalo from Princeton University, from different departments. Dr. John Higgins from Department of Geosciences, and Mark Zandalo is the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineer. I went out to the Southwest with Mark Zandalo research team. I'm doing a lot of work related to air quality with Mark Zandalo and Mark Zandalo's research team, and John Higgins doing a lot of work related to water quality, sand, dust, and doing the lead isotope ratio. And my background and why I got into environmental exposure research, I grew with my grandparents in Ojeto, Copper Canyon area. Excuse me. And my grandfather died of cancer back in 2006. And my grandmother, she passed away about 2 years ago. About a year ago. And she died at 106 years old. So it's really driven by my grandfather, really. He's the one that kept telling me, go to school, go to school, go to school. And my grandfather was a Army veteran of World War II. And he used to be a former uranium miner, work in the Southwest in different part of the reservation, and on to Colorado as well. And the picture down below is Moonlight Mine in Monument Valley, or Untitled Chapter. And the reason why I have this picture up is because that is the last mine that he worked at. And my cousin and I explored a lot of the abandoned uranium mine before they were closed. If there was any reclamation that was done, it's like we explored the mines. And that's one of the places that we saw as well. On the east side of this open pit mine, it's a huge open pit mine, by the way, there used to be a big boulder blocking an entrance. And my cousin and I looked at it and just wondered what was been behind it and how far it went in. It was like a huge opening, about maybe 15 feet by 12 feet across. So a huge opening. And one time my grandfather went over there when I was a little kid, and he just stood at the edge and just looked down for a very long time. Anyways, like later on when I came back from Arizona State University with my bachelor's degree, and him and I were sitting down having brunch, he told me about that particular mine. He was saying that there were three of them walking out, and there's a guy in front of him. He was walking in the middle, and the guy walking behind him. And the guy walking behind him is the one that didn't made it out alive. There's a big boulder that was blocking that, and that big boulder was his funeral. He's laying underneath that big boulder, and on that day back in the 70s, I believe. And once that happened, he told everybody to go home, or the owner of that particular mine told everybody to go home. So everybody went home, and some of the tools were left there. So they never went back to work after that. So that's the reason why I put that picture up, and the reason why I do a lot of stuff that I do related to environmental health, particularly uranium exposure, because of my grandfather and my family and relatives in Monument Valley area, even friends that have been exposed to uranium in some way or another, different part of the reservation. And the more I learn, the more I realize this is not my family, but many other families like me that are facing the same issue related to uranium exposure. So the more I learn, the more I realize it's not just my tribe that is facing this, but other tribe as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. I'll talk a little bit of the geology where the uranium ore is found. And there are other minerals besides uranium in there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. And then I'm talking a little bit about pathway exposure, skyline abandoned uranium mine, one of my study sites in Monument Valley, the Percolado Colorado River watershed network community, the environmental justice grant from US EPA from Region 9, San Francisco office, lead isotope ratio, it's not ration, ratio, the current study that I'm doing at the moment, and oil and gas fields air quality study in Anathan Council Chapter, Utah, and over New Mexico in conclusion. For people that are not aware of Navajo Nation, the Navajo Nation crosses 3 states. There are 3 states really, it's like Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. There's 110 chapters. Each of these polygons on the left-hand sides are the 110 chapters. They are like counties, and within those counties or polygons, we have chapters, and every month there are 2 meetings, the planning meeting and then the regular chapter meeting, and there are like town hall meetings every month, and we discuss issues facing the local area, region, and then Navajo nationwide issue. So that's how everybody's are informed of what's going on within each chapter, each region. On the right-hand side, are the 5 agencies. So breaking that down and putting the chapters together. There's the Western Agency, Chinle, Shiprock, Port Defiance Agency, and Eastern Agency, and they all comprise these agencies. And then there's like over close to 400,000 total population on the Navajo Nation, and half of them live on the Navajo reservation. The other half live off the reservation, living in other places like Baltimore, as you heard, in Washington, D.C. And when they're doing research, you get community support, the chapter resolution, agency support, and informed Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency about the research, so they are informed of what's going on. And then if there's an environmental health study, then you go to the next step, going to the health board and getting their approval as well. And then going back to Navajo Nation Human Research Review Board before you start your research. There's a whole process, whole step to go in terms of doing human research. And just when you're going to do environmental research, then just go up to the chapter, get the community support, or just write a resolution and inform them. And inform Navajo EPA as well. And with all these steps and with all your research and your findings, like the idea is to be transparent with your research and informing all the shareholders of your findings and inform every one of them, that from the grassroots to the community members, the chapter official, the Navajo Nation departments, if it's dealing with water, inform the water resource as well, and of course inform the Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency as well. And also it's good to just do and inform the Navajo Nation Human Research Review Board, even though it's not a health study. It's just good to inform them so they're aware of what's going on as well. And 27,000 square miles, big reservation. And in the middle of that great area is the Hopi Reservation. And then for the health stuff related to the hard rock mining, a lot of those areas are near the indigenous population, as you see on this slide that shows you where the Indian reservations are and where the hard rock mines are located. A lot of them are near the native or indigenous reservations. And the type of mining are taking place: the gold, uranium, vanadium, copper, lead. And each of them have the different health impact. And this slide, I just wanted to show this slide to inform you that when it comes to abandoned uranium mine, it's just not a Navajo issue. It's more of an issue for the Western population. And I think there needs to be a discussion and a dialogue that needs to be happening related to abandoned uranium mine. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are unaware of where a lot of these abandoned uranium mines are. And it's like in all the western part of the US, and even some of the Midwest and the East Coast as well, and Alaska as well. And this document, or this map, is coming from a government source, a government report as well, and that is listed down below. And with the health outcomes from a lot of these uranium exposures, like impact to kids, impacting American Indian communities, and for Native Americans, like we have the highest suicide rates and issue with diabetes and liver disease as well. And infant mortality is pretty high as well as birth defects, and life expectancy is pretty low. And there needs to be a lot more research and stuff happening in indigenous communities to help address a lot of these health issues, a lot of them coming from uranium exposure. For the geology part of this presentation, it's like on the right-hand side, you see the Chinle Formation, the Monkopi Formation, the bottom, the Shelly Sandstone or Chinle Formation. And a long time ago, there used to be a river going from Texas all the way towards the northwest up into Washington. And when that river was running, all these tributaries to that river, that's where the former rivers were, the tributaries and the rivers. Like that's where you see a lot of the uranium mines or the uranium ores. It's not just uranium ore that you see there. Like on the left hand side, you see pieces of what looks like uraninite. There's uraninite, cornatite. There's also vanadium. There's also thorium as well, and radium as well. So there's other minerals besides uranium and in a uranium ore. So keep that in mind. It's just not uranium. And on top of that, it is also radioactive as well. It gives off gamma radiation, beta radiation, and alpha radiation as well. And on the left hand corner is Skyline. This is where my research site is located. One of them. And this site has a documentary on it, which I will mention later in the presentation. And that's Skyline and again my research site, one of my research sites. And the other thing I like to point out is when it comes to uranium mining, where do you take all these uranium mining? So a lot of these uranium mining, when they took place, this was during the Cold War era, and when they taken to uranium mill, there's like 4 uranium mills that were built on the Navajo reservation. On the right hand corner is El Chita, one of the Superfund site, former uranium mill, and then there are rare metals on the bottom, and then on the right hand corner is the Superfund site in Shiprock, and then there's another one over in Church Rock, which I don't have a picture of it here, but there are four former uranium mills, and I believe altogether there are 24 uranium mills in the western U.S. And with the Skyline, there's a documentary called The Return of Navajo Boy. This documentary talks about a family near Skyline and the uranium ore that they use to build their homes, their octagon. And it talks about families going through these difficult times when their family members or little babies, little kids will have cancers. And one particular family, they lost a lot of relatives or siblings because of that. And The Return of Navajo Boy talks about this. And there's a lady by the name of Judy Pasternak. She read or she saw this documentary, and she did I believe a 5-piece story in LA Times. And she also wrote a book called Yellow Dirt. And she's still active when it comes to uranium mining. And she still keeps up with what's going on. But going back to this piece of LA Times by Judy Pasternak, there's a former congressman by the name of Henry Waxman that read her story on the abandoned uranium mine of Navajo Nation, and she got the five federal agencies together, and they came up with a 5-year plan. Now it's a 10-year plan. And down below shows you the 5 different federal agencies: the Indian Health Service, the U.S. EPA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Department of Energy as well. It got them all together and told them to clean up the mess that happened during the Cold War era. And from 2008, the 5-year plan happened, and there were all these meetings across Navajo Nation about the cleanup or the remediation of these abandoned uranium mines on Navajo Nation. At the beginning, everybody were happy and excited. And finally, something that was going to be done. But we are in 2022 or 2023 right now, and there's only been one cleanup so far. There's other cleanup that needs to happen. There's a discussion about getting this project moving forward again. It's like a lot of them were delayed because of COVID. And I'll talk a little bit about the pathway exposure, air, wind blowing, some of the uranium dust around soil, soil contamination, water. Since uranium is pretty soluble, it can be transported downstream. And I can get into the food web. I know for the food stuff for sheep, since we now would eat a lot of sheep. There's a study done here related to bioaccumulation of uranium in sheep tissues. So we did that study in Cameron, Arizona. We got the sheep off the reservation. That study is still currently being ongoing, as well with some sheep in Cove Red Valley area. And this shows that it is a generational impact so far. And people are still living near a lot of these abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo Nation. But it's not, like I said, it's not just Navajo Nation. There are other tribes that are facing the same issue, as well as even our neighbor up north at the White Mesa Mill, the Ute Reservation, not too far from where we live. And then there's our neighbor, the Hopi tribe, and then there's a San Juan Paiute as well, and the Havasu Paiute tribes, and the Public tribes in New Mexico as well. And since there's a lot of uranium mine along the Rocky Mountains and in the Four Corners area as well, we'd be talking about radon as well. And radon is a gas coming from decay of uranium. And for radon, action level is 4 picocures per liter. That's the action level. It's like anything beyond that, and it's like there's usually states or tribal government that will help address the radon levels in their homes, and a lot of that has to do with basements. If you have a house along the Rocky Mountains or on the Colorado Plateau, and if you want to get your home tested, go contact US EPA or the state and check the radon level in your home. And usually you have the radon testers sample like where people sleep, where family gather, in the basement as well. So you get those levels. So each of the room will have different levels. So just don't rely on one room. So get your rooms checked to find out the levels of radon gas in your homes. And thank you for the person that sent that. Thank you for the reminder as well. And for my research area, where I'm doing oil and gas research are in Untitled Chapter. That's in that area. And then for the Chaco Canyon area or Counselor Chapter areas in Mexico, and that's that area. And the stuff that I'm doing for the lead isotope ratio studies in Sanders area, the Pico River Valley area, it's down below. Just so people have an idea of where my research sites are. And this map shows you different pathway exposure and how people are being exposed. I made this map back in 2008, I believe, 2008, 2009, when I was at University of New Mexico. And all the little circles are wells that have elevated level of uranium in them. People were using them since there was a lack of water infrastructure on the Navajo Nation. All the rectangles are the abandoned uranium mines on the Navajo Nation. So the darker the colors, the more likely they're being exposed, like either by getting materials from these abandoned uranium mine mill sites and building homes, sheep corral, horse corral, or what have you. And on top of that, they have water contamination as well. And there's abandoned uranium mine near them. So different levels of exposure there. So the darker the colors, the more they're being exposed. And the lighter the color, the less they are being exposed. And that's what this map shows. And I need to update this map as well. And this is Skyline site. And I just wanted to show that there are some uraniums in the soil And at 19 parts per billion, really small amount of uranium in them. 36 parts per billion for 45 parts per billion. So that's the research that I'm doing, and it's still ongoing. I got some samples back, or I got some sample from this area again. I'm gonna go back to Princeton and do some more analysis of this particular site. So the research is ongoing. The issue is this site has been remediated, and the problem is along this edge and near the cliff, there are uranium dust and soil that are still on the edge. The people, USC peers, when they were doing remediation, the people that were working on this particular site, they were unable to get to the edge because it was near the edge, and there was like 800-foot drop there as well. And anytime there's like dust along the edge, the rocks get really slippery, like icy. So there's a serious threat of people falling off. So because of that, they told the workers not to do that. So for safety reasons, really, I'm glad everybody's okay, and there still needs to be work done in that area, but it's an ongoing discussion among the tribal regulators and federal regulators. And we did this study with Talana Lake Enterprise, or the project came from Talana Lake Enterprise with environmental justice grants. And the circle area is where the site is located. And when we're doing this project was about empowering the community as well. And anytime we have federal dollars, you have to write a quality assurance plan. And I wrote one up, and it got passed by the quality assurance office from Region 9, and signed off by Navajo EPA as well. And we hired about 8 people from different chapters to do this project. It was a citizen science project as well. So we taught the citizen how to do the sampling and show them how to do GPS as well. And we had to do 2-day training. On the first day, we did basic cartography, coordinates, mapping. I did the basic cartography coordinate mapping. I taught that to the community members. I was open to the community, so any community that wants to learn about this stuff, water sampling and basic cartography and major ions, heavy metals. That was done by Chris Shuey. And that was the first day. So we got questions. We helped answer questions as well. We're on hand. And we bought lunch for the community members, and we also bought continental breakfast for the community members as well, since we started early in the morning. And we ran this all day. And on the second day, we went out to the field, did some sampling. And if any of the community members or the people that we hired have any question about the sampling, the protocols, or what have you, we'll go through the whole process with them. And again, answer question as well. And we went together to some of the springs, and we even tested the tap water from the Sanders community. That's when we found out there was an issue with the public water in Sanders. That was a fun project, by the way. For this study, we used a safe drinking water rack, and matching contaminant levels are ran in this slide 30 parts per billion. The gross alpha matching contaminant level, radium 2 to 6 plus 2 to 8 as well. And then under the safe drinking water rack, there's more than 120 contaminants that are analyzed for the public water. Well, stuff related to public water anyways. And just to let you know that we did sample about 180, I think it was, samples that we did these are unregulated wells on the Navajo Nation. We sample along the Perkle River and the Colorado River and Bird Spring Loop and Cameron chapters. And since this was funded by US EPA from Region 9, Region 9 is doing a lot of work around uranium exposure on the Navajo Nation. They told us to go to a place called Blue Gap Coochie chapter and sample some wells in that area as well. So I went out there and sampled some of the springs in that area. And that's the highest reading that I got when it comes to gross alpha. Uranium 226 plus 228. It's one particular spring, really, that was mine claim 28. And was the most acidic, by the way, as well. It was what, 3.64, I think it was, the pH level. And going back to Sanders, and this map shows you where the river is, the Perkle River, and we sample south and north of that, and all the water contamination is along the Perkle River. And this map was done by Chris Shuey. He did a great job getting information, and just shows you that the windsong system, the public water system for Sander has been exceeding the MCL for uranium for quite a long time. And this graph shows you, so we don't know when the exceeding started happening, but starting from 2003, you show some exceedances. And not only this, but the elementary and middle school were tapping the same aquifer as well in the Perkle River, and they had elevated level of uranium in their drinking water as well. And since doing this project, they were able to get some sort of water filtration for their school. And this is from the US EPA from Region 9, or Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. It just shows you that that telling the community from Sanders that the water is still good, and we can still drink this water, but the community disagreed, and they started a GoFundMe page, and they've been getting water from there. And Navajo Tribal Chile Authority came in and got involved. And the outcome for this project, environmental justice project, was that the Sanders Homeowner Association came together. There was a new water filtration system at the elementary and middle school. Navajo Tribal Utility Authority started delivering water to the Sanders community. And Navajo Nation Public Water System, part of Navajo Nation EPA, took over the regulatory responsibility for the Sanders area as well, and help empower the community for the Sanders area as well. For my current research, I'm still doing some work in this area. It's like that's where I'm doing the lead isotope ratio research that I'm currently doing at Princeton University. I got some samples with me, which I'm gonna go ship them back and go back next month and do some more work out there, spend some time in the lab, and yeah, some good times there. And study 4, air quality study. That's an electric vehicle. That's the mobile lab as well. That's Mark Zondolo's research electric car. And these are different type of sensors. One's for methane, another one's for ammonia, another one's for CO2. And this little shiny thing is a GPS. And just to show you, there are different areas that have oil shale basin in the US, and the southeast corner of Navajo Nation, or part of Utah, is like in San Juan area, the Paradox Basin. That's where the oil field is at. And over in New Mexico, the San Juan Basin. And I'm not going to read this whole spiel about air quality, but it is pretty important. It's like and also related to greenhouse gases as well. I'm looking at the time just in case you're wondering, so I want to keep track of the time so I have enough time to answer questions. And there's our different type of health risks associated to air quality from oil and gas as well. I'm going to share this to the National Indian Health Board as well, so they'll have my presentation as well. There's like short-term and long-term effects of air quality. And again, just to show you where the oil and gas are located, Montezuma Creek and over in San Juan Basin, near Chaco Canyon. The council, it's not just council chapter, but what's the place? Other chapters as well in New Mexico, just south of Farmington. And the Paradox Basin, the geology. And for the Aneth oil field, the community, Montezuma Creek, and the Indian Health Service is in that area. The elementary school as well. The Aneth chapter is located where it says Aneth is that, and we did this loop, and just remember, it's like we're looking at methane and methane as a tracer in oil and gas as well, but also we have some information about benzene as well. It's like it says, if benzene makes up about 0.1% of natural gases, so this results in one of them. It says like 25,000 parts per billion. There's the result for methane there. It shows you some level for benzene as well. And this was done by a student, an undergrad student from Princeton University, and her name is Olivia. I'm sorry, Olivia, for misspelling your first name. But one of the highest reading was done just east of Montezuma Creek, 25,000 parts per billion. And another area is like near the high school, the clinic, and the elementary school as well. So 4,000, over 4,000 parts per billion as well. And this past year, back in January, we went and did some sampling again. And this time, like the levels were at 17,000 parts per billion near the high school, the clinic, the elementary school as well, which is I find that pretty disturbing. I haven't get those results yet, but pretty soon I will, and I'll have all of this published. Just to show you what an inversion looks like. This is again Montezuma Creek. A good time to do air sampling when it comes to air quality is during the winter, when inversion happens, when the layer of VOCs drops down, and this is what you see. And people from the community of Montezuma Creek talked about this inversion all the time, and that's what it looks like. Just like a little layer, just hovering in the small community of Montezuma Creek. And the levels of methane and benzene. Methane levels are on the left-hand side, and benzene levels are on the right-hand side, to show you that what the levels are. The March 22 sampling was back in March of 22, 2000. 2022. We did this when it was a little warmer, very windy, still cold, but not as cold. And on the bottoms this past January. So there's a difference between the spring and winter temperatures. So the bottom is like a colder temperature. So you see the levels a lot more. And also the risk levels as well. And then Williams House and Lightbrook School, that is over in Counselor Chapter. Again, different levels during the spring and also the January level. I put a portable air collector and at the Counselor Chapter. So you'll see that level in a bit. But as you can see, it goes up to 7,000 parts per billion. And this is this past January sampling. This is like looking at the month of this past January. And on the bottom two slide, it shows you the levels. And this is near the Lightbrook School, the elementary school. And on the left picture, you'll see a gas plant near the school. And on the right-hand side, it's like the level going up. These are on 2 different days. And we did the sampling in the morning as well. And this is an nth chapter. This picture here is a picture of a test drill, and people that were sampling for or trying to look for oil, they drilled this and left it. It's producing water, but when you look at the water, there's like a small film of oil on top. And people are using that. It's like I'm using that for livestock use and using it for irrigation as well. And there are a couple of them out in Anna chapter as well. And yeah, there needs to be some more research done in relation to this as well. How do we reduce emissions? Working with the tribal regulators, federal regulators, and of course the air quality, the Clean Air Act, basically, to help improve air quality when it comes to oil and gas spills. And my acknowledgements, the people that are involved with both research projects from the Department of Geoscience, my mentor, John Higgins, the Higgins research team, Mark Zondelo's research team, Eduardo, the person that recruited me to Princeton University, Fazal Sheikh, and Anna chapter, Counselor chapter, Navajo Nation EPA, the Utah Navajo Health System as well, and the research team back in 2022. I do have another picture of the research team from 2023, the sampling trip that we did, or the fieldwork that we did for 2023. I just can't find the picture. I don't know where I put that picture. Questions?
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Please raise your hand and we'll go through and we'll call you out if you want to speak or if you want to type your questions in the chat. Let's see. I see. Dr. Rock, can you stop sharing your screen for a second so I can
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I see a hand. Aaron, would you like to ask?
Yes. I just want to know about the current levels here for the, I guess, uranium exposure. I live in the Tuba City area, and my mother, she used to live right next to the that uranium mine. I guess the hospital housing used to be located there, and so I wanted to know how the situation is for the Western Agency.
I do know some information about Contaminant chapter, that particular site that you're talking about. I can get some information. I do know some people from Navajo EPA. I can reach out to them and get some answers and give them back to you. If you give me your contact information, I can go and do that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my contact information?
Yeah, you can just put it in the chat,
Okay.
and I can get that information.
Lori?
Yeah, Lori Montserrat. Hi, thank you so much. That was really fascinating. I had a kind of weird question about the methane testing. Why was it in that interesting pattern? Was that drill following waterways, drill sites, something else?
The big old loop.
Yeah.
Like that was because like that was the road that we took that went all the way around.
Okay.
That was the route that we took.
Okay. That makes sense.
Last year and this year we stayed on the main road because like electric car is not a 4x4 vehicle, and it's not it's not lifted or high off the ground, so we didn't want to get stuck. And it's electric car, so it's like it's the battery drains really fast in really cold weather, so we have to be very conscious of what we do and how far we go as well.
Yeah, no heater, no AC.
Yeah, yep. So if we run the heater as well during cold conditions, the battery drains pretty fast.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Rock,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't see how to raise my hand, but I come from the unceded Ute region, the Uinta Basin area, where they do a lot of fracking and they have a lot of underground storage wells for the produced water. Who is that, a state level regulation or a federal level? Who gives them the green light to just pump this byproduct underground or to let it evaporate, right? Because the air quality and the health impacts are really quite alarming. And I just worry that the oil companies get the green light before regulation catches up.
In the state of Utah, I think it's it might be the state of Utah. I know for the state of Utah, it's like the state of environmental quality. They're more in control of different environmental issue. So that might be one of them. But I do know there's a person from Utah State University that's doing some research out in that area. I don't remember his name, but he was telling me about. I heard his name when I was talking to some folks from Utah State University. I can get that information and I can give that back to you. So
that would be really great, because I'm in discussions with the people who work in that industry, and I just have concern for the residents of the Uinta Basin region. I would love to know what's being done to help protect their health.
Yeah, yes. As a matter of fact, before I started this project last year, one of the things that came up was doing some research up there as well. There, southern New Mexico, as well as Bakersfield, but I just said with the amount of funding that we have, we don't have enough enough to cover such a big area. And on top of that, my postdoc is just for 2 years as well, so I need to add additional years to do some more research in that area if I was gonna go, if I went and did that. So what the amount of time that I do have and the amount of funding that I did have from Princeton University is like so I have to scope that down and make it smaller.
That's understandable. And certainly these implications are big and complex, and the water right impacts and all of it. So I'm just glad to know you and the work you're doing. Let me know how I can help.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
We have a hand up from Daryl. Daryl.
Yes. Daryl Yazi, my brother.
Oh. Well,
That's Daryl. Daryl. Happy you made it, Daryl.
Good afternoon, Yate. Sila, it's always good to hear you share the research that you're doing, and even now, you know, we're still looking to find solutions that have plagued Navajo Nation for years. And then when we look at it, it's 80 years of uranium impacts to the Navajo Nation. What's going on? Why is it still here? I often will ask our federal partners, and I use that term very loosely, because when we're talking with our federal partners, we share the scenario as it exists. We share everything that we can, at least from the research that we've done here. We have experts here that are continuing to work through identifying the overall landscape with impacts, right? And we're 80 years in, and we've not done a true cleanup yet. Why is that? Is it my Navajo accent? Is it Tommy's Navajo accent? Are we not being understood? What are we missing here? What do we do differently? How do we ensure now that the research data that's there that shows the pathways of impact, and now we have a clear pathway showing where risk is in existence. We know, and then maybe this is what the next question is how do we get all of the impacts, the data that exists, connecting what Dr. Rock's research is in identifying that there's a true correlation from point A to point B and going into the families at point C. What are we missing? If we look at the federal approach right now through US EPA, we're following the CERCLA process, which is wholly based on identifying risk. And we're at a disadvantage because that risk that they use, the model that they use, is all based on population density. We're at a disadvantage, period, right away when we start talking about risk in that sense. But how do we establish the facts that risk is there, and it's there at a very high level, because everything that we utilize within our immediate environment, which has been compromised by the abandoned uranium mine sites and everything that it's touched. How do we bridge that gap? And I'm so glad I have all of these professionals now on this platform. Dr. Rock, I see Chicago. Jego się isla di adna intino. Ishi sin kai at bayan tio di ada yadno. Jego się isla ba hehen sin hehen dini doletsala. continue to do the research, continue to do the work. Just from that perspective, what do we do next? We have all of these health professionals here now. What's the next component that we plug in to ensure that when US EPA talks about risk and identifies the risk element to plug into their CERCLA calculation, that we achieve what we're setting out to do, and that's to identify that this is a true hazard that needs to be addressed, not in another 10 years, not in another 20 years, because like I said, we're 80 years in. And at some point, does it just become, well, that population of Navajo people, they just are prone to all of these different metabolic diseases because of what? Because we haven't cleaned up uranium sites? Waste material doesn't sit still. Waste material doesn't know what a fence line is, and it will carry out beyond those areas that are identified as controlled areas. I'm sorry, but a loose uranium waste material blowing in the wind, because Navajo Nation is constantly having windy days, it doesn't sit still. It doesn't know what that sign says that says caution, do not enter. It doesn't acknowledge that. It doesn't maintain itself in place. Thank you. Yeah, so good to see you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Glad you made it, Shana. Thank you,
Yep.
Okay, this was such a great discussion, everyone. I'm very pleased that this is going so well. However, it is at the top of the hour, and I know we are only here for a certain amount of time. So I do want to thank everyone for attending this environmental health webinar series. In the chat is an evaluation for today's session. Your feedback is very important, and we want to continue to do the improvement and suggestions for any future trainings or topics that you want us to consider. That's where the survey comes in from. So if you would fill that out before you guys leave, or at a later time, that would be really appreciated. The next webinar series will be Wednesday, May 24th. So we'll be having another speaker. We'll be talking about more topics. So please come out to that. Also, the National Indian Health Board is hosting their first Environmental Health Summit, July 25th and 26th in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So do save the dates. There will be recordings and presentation slides as well. And we'll send that out for you. So thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Rock, for coming and having our presentation together. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for letting me share this research as well as like letting everyone know it's just not, when it comes to uranium mining, uranium itching, uranium exposure, it's like it's just not just an indigenous issue as well. It's for the people that are being impacted regardless of ethnicity as well. And it's just not just another issue. It's a bigger, wider issue, and we need to start a dialogue when it comes to remediation of these abandoned uranium mines as well. And there needs to be some sort of policy addressing the cleanup of these abandoned uranium mines as well, as because my grandmother from the Sioux Nation, Cheyenne Whiteface, she is working on a policy, something that will help address the cleanup of these big masses of abandoned uranium mines within the U.S. And that is something that we need and help address the health impact from these abandoned uranium mines as well. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much.
We will be emailing the presentation and recording to everybody who put their email address in the registration. So just be on the lookout for that. And the recordings will also be uploaded to YouTube as well. Thank you all for coming. Have a great, safe evening, and thank you for coming.
Bye.